As I mentioned before, this is a part of our continuing education series. We try to do a couple of programs, 1 to 2 per month. It is my desire to continue to increase the pace and quality of these presentations. There's just so many great people in our region doing awesome work and stewarding the land and caring for our resources. So we really want to highlight that. If you have ideas, you can always email me. We tend to schedule these presentations about a year out. We build a schedule for these. So we'll be doing that planning in November. If you have some thoughts or have a great speaker you'd like to send my way, I'd love that. You can find my email here. You can also find me on our Land Stewards webpage. Lots of ways to contact me. You'll find my phone number there, however works best for you. Speaking of classes, we have some other good ones coming up. After tonight's lecture and slideshow, there's going to be a field tour associated with this same subject. We're going to be visiting some gardens that are helping to support pollinators. That'll be this Saturday, and you can still register for that. A couple days later, there's a fire resiliency seminar that's free. It's a webinar. Feel free to join that, put on by our fire program. Our Land Stewards in-person field training is going to kick off on September 9th. Registration is now closed for that class, but it is an annual class. So if it's something that you're interested in and you'd like to see a syllabus and think about joining in a future year, feel free to contact me. Happy to share information about that and love to see you in class if you haven't already graduated from the Land Stewards program. Soil testing workshop also coming up with small farms. And then we have an heirloom apples presentation and workshop. That'll be an in-person at SOREC. So if you're around on the 25th, come check it out. Maybe get a taste of some cider and other things. Well, we have the great pleasure. Many of you probably know Robert because he's been involved in just about everything around here. Robert is the co-founder of Southern Oregon Monarch Advocates and the founder and former chair of Western Monarch Advocates. He earned a BS in hydrology and is a former adjunct professor at Southern Oregon University. Robert's lived in the Rogue Valley for 25 years, passionately researching the biodiversity of the basin where our Western monarchs stop and rear their young during their fantastic migration. He's fascinated by the beauty of life processes of the monarch butterfly and other pollinators, and he's joined forces with others to help restore their habitat and bring back the population. I've known Robert for quite a while, and he's an immensely curious person who his curiosity leads him to fantastic finds and endeavors, and he has not only great ideas and a ton of creativity, but he is very good at executing on them and making positive change. So I'm really pleased to have Robert here. Thank you for joining us tonight. Super excited to hear this talk, and I'm going to hand the controls over to you.
Okay, Eugene, let's see. So if you want to stop screen. Okay, there we go.
There you go.
And I hope for others, you can see me, because the first thing I need to see is, Eugene, you mentioned I'm curious. You could take that 2 ways, and actually you might as well take it both ways. I am a curious person. So hello, everybody. I guess that was a good enough introduction for me, I think, Eugene. I appreciate that. So I'm going to hold off on that so we can keep moving. But first, I see well, first I want you to see how I'm decked out for the occasion. Got milkweed, monarch butterflies. All right. So I'm dressed for the occasion. Normally, if it was a smaller group, here we are on Zoom. It would have been nice to go around the room and take the time to do that. But, in this kind of setting and with 18 participants, we can't do that. So sorry about that, folks. Were we in person, it would be a lot more informal and relaxed, and questions and answers and so on. But there's more than 18 people here because we actually have a 19th entity that I want to introduce you to at this time. If you're watching my screen, take a little look at this lovely monarch chrysalis that was a wild monarch that was brought in to just have a place of peace for a couple of weeks, and we're going to release this monarch later after it ecloses. So we have some monarchs joining this as well. And I have some extra good news for anybody that is planning to take the field trip. I believe I'm going to have at least 2, possibly 3 monarch adult butterflies to go with us that we will take to each of the monarch way stations and pollinator gardens that we're going to go to. And we have research tags, and we will tag them. You can all help if you want to take a look at that. But the biggest thing when we tag them and release them, if they're ever found anywhere, it's really fun to name them. And if they found one that's named Eugene, for example, it's kind of fun because they let you know that your monarch butterfly was found 6 months later in 500 miles away in Bolinas, California, because our Western monarch butterflies do migrate like that. So we'll be doing that as well. So hi, everybody. And I will start my slideshow now. I've got probably 50 minutes to an hour of slides, and I think you'll find them interesting and want to stick with me on that. And I think the way this is set up tonight, please go right ahead, and we're going to hold questions. No, send in your questions through the chat. And I don't watch that very well because I'm talking so much. But Eugene and I think Aaron will be tracking that, and we'll go through the questions. We'll have plenty of time at the end for questions. So I hope that all works for everybody. And I can't see any heads shaking, of course.
Correct.
So I'm going to assume that it's you're all ready to go. And I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we'll get going here. So first, I want to verify, at least with you, Eugene, is my screen up?
Yes, I see it.
Okay. Okay, great. And I can use my pointer. Okay, so here we are. Our Western monarchs, what happened and why should we care? And Western is a good point here. So as Eugene mentioned, I'm with Southern Oregon Monarch Advocates, which was an entity, a nonprofit that is still actually not a 501c3 or anything. We're just a really good, active group of folks that fly by the seat of our pants and get things done. Starting in 11 years ago, and also started another larger entity called the Western Monarch Advocates as part of that whole process. Kind of like this slide. Take a look at the artwork over here. This was done by a 12-year-old at the time. I mean, you guys talk about folks that care. The monarch is so iconic and stands for so much. And it's not only for people my age, and maybe some of you, I don't know, but this is a 12-year-old that cared so much. I mean, there's a lot in that little artwork over there. And on the other side, on the left, here is a shot of a monarch butterfly that has been tagged and released at the first golf course right here in Southern Oregon that actually registered a monarch way station at their golf course at Stewart Meadows, right here in Medford, and was the first one registered with Monarch Watch in our state. And I think that's pretty cool. Also, just so you know, I'm not a lepidopterist or even an entomologist, but I've learned quite a bit about monarch butterflies. I'm another ologist, as Eugene mentioned. I'm actually a hydrogeologist, but it doesn't matter. We're going to have a lot of fun and learn quite a bit about monarch butterflies and also what's going on with them. So thanks for having me. But as I show here, again, because we have had a nice rapport with the OSU Extension Land Steward Program. Back in 2021, I presented with Christina Lefevre of Pollinator Project Rogue Valley, and we had a great time and a great class. And at that point, it was I don't know if it was virtual or not. That's right after COVID. Anyway, good time, and I don't know. It's good to be back. I mean, what a great program, OSU Extension. So here we are. What are we going to do tonight? What I'd like to take you through is, first of all, in order for you to understand some of the amazing things going on, you really need to know monarch basics. And I don't know how many of you, if you were here, I'd ask for hands in the room. How many of you, know the real basics? But I'm going to assume there's always people where they're super surprised about this population. So we're going to do that. And recently, as some of you might have heard, we've also had this probable federal listing of the monarch butterfly as threatened, not endangered, but threatened. And that's rather important. Those words have a lot of power as far as politics are concerned. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to go to, okay, whatever was going on, what does that mean to us? And here, we're land stewards. You're here because you're part of the land steward program. What can we do here in Southern Oregon? And you're going to find out why that's a lot more important than just Southern Oregon. But then we have Saturday. Those of you that have signed up, we have a field trip planned. And that field trip, basically what it is, I'll just mention it now so we can understand the logistics. We will meet at 9 o'clock in Phoenix at the Blue Heron Park, which, some of you don't know, is right down the main strip on Highway 95 and just off towards Bear Creek. And we will quickly probably figure out how to carpool and so on. And what we're going to do is we're going to visit 3 very different monarch way stations from there, a small, a medium, and a large. And like I said, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have an adult monarch butterfly that we can tag and release at each station. So I hope you can attend that as well. Should be nice weather too, since we're going to do it in the morning. Okay. Monarchs are cool. They're iconic for so many different reasons. They're beautiful. They're spiritual. Here's just a couple of cool techie facts about them. They're so different from us, y'all. I mean, okay, they use the magnetic field of the Earth and the position of the sun each day as it changes to migrate. They're one of the longest migrating creatures on Earth, but there's plenty more that migrate even further. They see light that we cannot. And you might all think, oh, I've seen monarch butterflies that kind of fly around over the house. That's, that they're just fluttering and flitting around. But when they migrate, they have been recorded up to over 2 miles high, because what they're doing is they're following some of the airstreams. How do they know that? You got me. Monarchs cannot hear. And instead of tasting with, you might think they taste with that little sticky outy thing in their mouth, which is called a proboscis. Nope, they don't taste with that. They actually taste with thousands of hairs on the bottom of their feet, and they smell with their antennae. And a little thing that you probably can't really read, I think, since you know that the adults need to feed on nectar, they are supposedly 2,000 times more sensitive to the dosage of sugars in flowers than our tongues can be. So again, pretty different kind of a critter that we all kind of love and are fascinated with. Okay, so here's a little fab fact. But I can't ask you, and I can't see a raise of hands, so this will probably go fast. Maybe I could put Eugene on the spot. Eugene, are you still there? Unmute yourself. Okay, so let's do this, and we'll see if we can embarrass Eugene. Monarchs track, this is multiple choice, Eugene, just like when you were in school. Monarchs track day length, sun direction, and the Earth's magnetic field to migrate. What part of their body do they sense that magnetic field? A, carry a magnet in their pocket. B, feet hairs. C, head. D, antenna tips. Do you have a guess there?
I'm gonna guess D.
D? You're not going to guess A? Come on. They could have a magnet in their pocket, right?
I mean, feet hairs sounds pretty good too.
Okay, well, you are right. Good for
Yay.
you. Antenna tips. And I put the picture up because you guys look at that. Okay, look at the little tips on those antennae and think about how small a monarch butterfly is. What kind of equipment is in there so they can track the magnetic field in antenna tips? Again, just fascinates me. Okay, whoops, now we're moving into Monarch Basics 101. And this is just a fun shot to show you some of the basics that you're probably all familiar with. And we're going to get into them one at a time, but the images are fun. Especially this one over here, that's my grandson's head, Sean, though he's now turning 12. So maybe I should update this photo, but I don't think I can get him to put a monarch on the back of his head anymore. So one of the biggest things about monarchs that probably most of you have heard is the host plant, that is the plant for the caterpillars. All butterflies, as you probably know, start out as larvae or caterpillars. Well, actually, at eggs. And they need a plant to eat, not to drink nectar, but to consume. And the only host plant for the monarch butterfly are milkweeds. Simple. If the milkweeds are gone, all monarchs would be gone because it's the only host plant for their caterpillars. Other butterflies and moths have many different host plants, and others have just a specific one, but it's unique for monarch butterflies. So we have 3 native species here in Oregon, in Southern Oregon. Here's one. A lot of you might have seen it. It's called showy milkweed with a beautiful, nice smelling flower that's also a great pollinator for other pollinator insects. Here's that seed pod. Some of you have probably seen that. And here is a tiny little eating machine that just, actually I lied because actually they do eat one other thing. When the little caterpillar first comes out of its beautiful egg, it turns around and consumes it and eats those nutrients. Then it starts on the milkweed for the rest of its caterpillar life. Okay, the second, oh, sorry, went too fast. Here is another one you might have seen before, narrow leaf milkweed with blade-like leaves, a different pod, a lot skinnier. Look at this caterpillar actually crawling up, eating some of the milkweed. You just never know what part of the plant they're going to eat. And another big chubby caterpillar down here. I typically find many more female adults laying her eggs on narrow leaf for some reason. Now, other of you in the audience, maybe you've found more folks, more adults, females laying eggs on showy milkweed, but it's just in my yard, in my monarch way station, I just every year, this narrow leaf is the one. But there's a third one that a lot of folks haven't seen much of, and it's called heartleaf. And as you can see, it's a beautiful plant, very different looking, with a very different kind of flower. And also, if you see over here, the pods are pretty. They kind of turn a little pinkish and so on. And they're very hard for nurseries to propagate for some reason. And they're found in very rather harsh environments. And we're going to talk about this. This is a pretty special milkweed that may become more helpful for our monarch butterflies with what's happening in the world right now, with climate change especially. And we're going to cover that in a slide later on. So I mentioned Western monarchs. Hopefully many of you know that there are 2 really major migrating populations in in North America. The eastern one is what most people all know about. It's the ones that go and they fly down and they overwinter down in those beautiful Oyamel pine forests down in Mexico, in central Mexico, at like 10,000 feet above sea level, up in the high mountains down there. And it's a big population. And until we kind of started Southern Oregon Monarch Advocates, that's part of the reason we started is we thought way back then, people didn't know about our Western population, which as you see over here is very, very different. First of all, when they migrate, first of all, here they are over in the West, and you can pretty much figure that the Rocky Mountains or the Rocky Mountain Cordillera is kind of a dividing line, you know, which makes sense, high mountains. But our Western population, when they have to go over winter, when it's freezing cold up here, they go all the way down to Southern California and Central California, right down on the coast at 20 feet above sea level, kind of down there with the Beach Boys. So even though they're the same species, their migration patterns are vastly different. And we realized that folks, we kind of thought, why are the Western monarchs kind of the redheaded stepchild that the rest of the country didn't know about? And we're very pleased now that many people now realize that this population exists. And with the way things are going, it's very important to know that we've got two different populations that might fluctuate differently at different times. So, Monarch Basics 101 again. Here we go. Let's get started so that we all understand that time frame. So the female comes and lays this gorgeous egg on milkweed, of course, right? And the egg will exist as an egg for about 4 days. And then it will hatch and we get a caterpillar. And the caterpillar will eat and munch and poop a lot, and eat and munch and poop a lot. And pretty much that's all they do for a good 2 weeks. And then they finally pupate or into what we call a chrysalis. And they will exist there for another 10 days to 2 weeks. Then they finally eclose and turn out as an adult. And the adult lives for about 6 to 10 weeks, or as we show over here, 14 to 35 days. But wait a minute, didn't I just say that they overwinter? So how can an adult monarch butterfly that only lives for 6 to 10 weeks go hang out all winter long? Have I just messed up and you guys are wondering what I'm talking about? No, here's a little bit more of the magic. This happens 4 times every season. So just so you understand it, the monarchs are down at the overwintering site and it's spring. And finally, the weathers are good and milkweed is starting to grow in California. So the first generation from those trees in California, they move off and they mate down in California. And that's down in March and April. So we don't see them. They're down there. But that generation starts to get out there on the move. And they create a second generation. Some stay down there and some start migrating. And the second generation, the one that starts moving, gets up here in May or June. Some of you may have seen, this is kind of early, and there aren't too many, but this is the generation that makes it up here. And when they make it up here, they reproduce, and some of them hang around, but some of them keep migrating northward. So we get a third generation. And those generations, as you're reading, they all live for that short lifespan, 6 to 10 weeks. And then the amazing thing happens. The fourth generation, now we're in the fall. Now the milkweed is all starting to go away. It's starting to get cold. There's no food. The monarchs aren't going to survive here. They'll die. And for some bizarre, amazing reason, the fourth generation doesn't reproduce right away. They up and migrate down south again, and they live a total lifespan of 6 to 7 months. What is that? About 8 times longer than the other 3 generations. So if you really think about it, it's not the same monarch that does it. This monarch, who's never heard of this before, migrates to a place they've never been to, they've never seen it. Somehow it must be in their DNA, and they overwinter in trees for 3 to 5 months until the cycle starts all over again in the spring. And this is just some of my photos to show. I just love that a monarch egg is about the size of a grain of sand, but if you ever get it under a microscope, look at what it looks like. And here's the tiny caterpillar eating his egg first, and he gets huge. By the way, another really fun fab fact, and I won't ask because we probably don't have enough time. I'll answer my own question. How many times bigger does a monarch caterpillar get by weight from when it first pops out or hatches out of the egg to when it finally pupates and turns into the chrysalis? And I know you can't answer me, so I will let you think about it for a minute. And I'll tell you when we flip. No, I'll tell you now. Might as well tell you now. If you guessed 100, if you guessed 1,000, still too short. They increased their weight by 2,000 times, those little eating machines, before they finally pupate and go into their chrysalis mode. Another amazing thing. Geez. And this shot, if you haven't seen it, is what the chrysalis looks like probably an hour or two before the adult comes out. And then there's the magic, if you've never seen it, when they do come out and actually pump their wings full of fluid from their abdomen, and all kinds of things are going on for those few hours. And I just love this shot. Everybody likes these beautiful monarch butterflies that are pristine and perfect. Well, look at this one. This is a female. These guys are resilient. This is a warrior princess. Look at this shot and think about what this migrating monarch female has gone through. She's still on the fly. Who knows if she's already reproduced, or maybe she still has to do that. But I just find that fascinating, that they're tough. They're really tough. So here we are. Pretty different from us. Little joke here. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 weeks? I hope somebody's laughing out there. Here's another little fun fab factor. And again, I have to answer it since we're not all in the same room. Do any of you or some of you know how to tell the male monarch from the female? When you're used to it, it's quite simple. When I look at this, it's very obvious. And some of you can point, even though I can't see. But here's the answer. The male monarch on the back hind wing, on the top there, has those 2 black spots that are always right there on that same spot. The female does not have that. You see those spots right there. And the female often has thicker veins, but that's kind of hard to see. The real thing is the spots here. And fascinating thing about the spots, they're not just spots. They're little pheromone packs or glands. They emit a pheromone for the female. Interesting. Okay. So I mentioned we're having a problem here. What happened? So back in 2018, our monarch population really took a dive. And I will mention right now, folks, what the monarchs symbolize is really the plight of all of our pollinators. So we're talking about monarchs today, but think about that they kind of symbolize the plight and the issues that are plaguing a lot of other pollinator insects. So take a look at these 2 shots. These are at Lighthouse Grove, which is one of the overwintering sites down in Santa Cruz. And this shot is taken of the same tree. 2017, look at all these clusters. And this is 2018. There's maybe, I don't know, 6 or 8 monarchs there. And this graph shows it off pretty well too. So on this graph, we count the Western monarch butterflies, and I won't go into how that's done, but however it is done, it's the same every year. So we can trust the changes at least that we see. And if you look here, it starts in 1997, goes all the way to 2024. And yes, in 1997, we had over 1 million that we would count down at the overwintering sites. But leaving that alone, if you just even look through here, bouncing around between a couple 100,000 and 400,000 for many years. We had a dip down here. But then all of a sudden, in 2018, like that photo I just showed you, the count was 24,000 or to 21,000, which if you think about it, that's I mean, that's all the Western monarch butterflies that migrate down to the overwintering sites. That means that's what represents Idaho, Oregon, uh, Washington, parts of Utah that made it down there to overwinter. Very big cause for concern. I mean, like it shows here, it's less than a healthy hive of honeybees has more critters in it than that. And then in 2020, the count was almost down to nothing. The count was 1,899. It doesn't even show on the bar graph here. Well, then we thought, okay, by this time we're really concerned and it's being considered to be listed. And there was a jump, and everyone was feeling like, well, either the monarchs are resilient, or maybe it's because of our work that's helping them. Either way, 3 years of that. But in 2024, this last winter, 2024, 2025, the last count, again, just a scant 9,000 butterflies. So this is the cause for the issues for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to consider should the monarch be listed as threatened or not. The bad news is, and we won't go through this slide, but just look at this same. This is a graph of how they count the Eastern monarch population differently than we do it here. They count it by how many acres they see from above. But again, I won't go into that. The important thing is, however they're doing it, again, we see a drop right here, and then it looks like a resilience here. And then all of a sudden, the 2024, the second lowest ever. So don't worry, this is going to get better than this. If any of you are feeling bad, hang on, we're going to get better. But big deal is a lot of you are going, why? What's going on? And if you're thinking it's probably human caused, most scientists would 100% agree that you're right. And it's not one thing that's like a silver bullet. It's three that are like a combination. One, climate change. And we're going to go into all these. Two, pesticide use and changes in the types of pesticide we're using. And three, habitat and land loss, especially for both populations. So here's a look at habitat. Here's a really wonderful overwintering site. If any of you been to Pismo Beach and gone to the Monarch Grove down there, again, I can't see you raise your hand, but I hope some of you have been down there. It's really cool and super fun. And it's one of the most well-known little ones. It's a beautiful spot and it's right by the beach. But folks, take a look at this. Here it is, 4-acre site right here where I've got my pointer going. And look how everything has grown around it. So we've got the beach on one side and we have us humans on the other. I mean, let's face it, we like to live here too. But the monarchs have been going to these trees, these eucalyptus trees, for many, many, many years. Here's a shot of Highway 1, and you can just pull right over. The overwintering site is right over here. It's great to go. They have docents here that show you the monarchs clustering in the trees, and some of them actually come down and mate. you know, in the spring and so on. But I will tell you that my wife and I, tagged a monarch butterfly many years or a few years ago, and it was found on New Year's, because remember, they go there to overwinter, right? When it's freezing cold here. So it was found on New Year's. Really great. We were just ecstatic that they found it in a cluster in a eucalyptus tree in Bolinas, California. And you know where it was now? In a Bi-Mark parking lot. Still going down there, and they still found it, and it's still hanging out, but land use is a big one. I mentioned climate change, and I also mentioned that the heartleaf milkweed might be helpful. So here's a secondary reason that climate change is causing some problems. Check this out, not for the monarch itself, but here's a graph. This is down in California. So what's going on is we are learning that because of the warming climate, especially over here in the West, the monarchs want to leave earlier. They warm up, the sun hits them, and they want to leave and take off. And as we mentioned, they have to find milkweed right away because they reproduce and raise their young. Well, in a lot of cases, the milkweed isn't up yet. So here they are migrating and you know, migrating 20 miles away, getting ready to get started on that first generation, and there's no milkweed because of that. The milkweed isn't catching up. Big problem. Luckily, or one thing we learned is, see down here, you can see several species that are native to California, and they start growing later. So these early months, February and January, and a little bit of March, there wouldn't be any milkweed. However, these two species, Asclepias californica and cordifolia, that's the heartleaf, they start growing early. So we have gone down to California and have collected lots of seeds. Tom Landis has been the leader on this. He's been a great ambassador to go down, find heartleaf milkweed that's native and natural, find different nurseries and get them to start growing it so that it can be planted in different areas and get it back out there to help with this issue with climate change. And so the graph for us is a little later, but we want to do the same thing here. I mean, the heartleaf milkweed also starts to grow a little earlier than our other two native species as well. Like I said, it's hard to grow, but you'll get to see a couple of heartleaf plants at two of the way stations that we're going to go to on our field trip on Saturday. I would also just mention that the rate of the climate change is also not the same. Take a look at this map, and again, you don't have to follow. The colors really help us out. This is a map that looks at the rate of change. In other words, how fast is it heating up state by state over each decade? And if they average it out, you see that the green states, well, they're really not even increasing much at all. These, if you see here, North and South Dakota, the temperature hasn't increased very fast at all. 0 for South Dakota and 0.1 for North Dakota. But take a look at the West. Look at these red states. If you can't read it, this says 0.7 degrees. So 0.7 degrees every decade increase in temperature on average for our Western states. So again, our Western population has to deal with things at a faster pace than the Eastern population. And my friend Chip Taylor, the director of Monarch Watch, actually just sent me an updated graph where he added, if you see this one, it says to 2020. But if we add data from 2024, look at these states as well. So the climate change is increasing even faster throughout here. But anyway, the important thing is even how the rate of change for climate change is a little bit difficult or more problematic for us in the West. Okay, I mentioned pesticides. You probably know these. The issues here are all of these are bad news for all of our pollinators. As you know, I imagine some of you are rolling your eyes. And the three biggies, glyphosate here, Roundup, and so on, but always look for the actual name on any product you buy and you'll find it. Glyphosate 2,4-D in some of the things. And then up over here, the other big one these days is the neonicotinoids. And some of you maybe even know more than I do about why, but I'll show you a graph here that really kind of explains a little bit about the neonicotinoids are really a big deal because they travel through the plant's whole entire system, and including the nectar and the pollen that all the pollinators eat and drink. And then when the plants die, they stick around. And that's the issue also. They remain in the streams and soils for several years. So it's where we're migrating with the use of our herbicides. It's super important and a thing to be looking out. By the way, if you ever want to buy pollinated plants as milkweed, but other pollinated plants as well, please always check with whatever nursery you go to see if if they can't explain that it's neonic free or herbicide free, don't even go there. That if they haven't even researched that, I wouldn't even check it out. Okay, it's more than just the monarchs, as I mentioned earlier, and I needed to show you a couple of slides about this. There was a huge study done by 23 different authors that was published in Science magazine back in March of this year. And long story short, as you can read here, for the last 20 years, between 2000 and 2020, the total butterfly abundance fell by 22%. And they looked at 554 recorded species. Or another way to look at that is that's almost, it's between a fifth and a quarter. Just imagine, for every 5, whatever kind of butterfly you're looking at 20 years ago, now there's only 4. So again, as I mentioned, if the monarch is the herald or maybe the harbinger of what's going on, so be it. Here's another one. This is a little maybe complicated, but I think you'll like this. Another study by Matt Forrester back in 2021 shows the population growth rate. And I know you can't read it, don't worry, but these are all different butterfly species over here. And the red line that you see would show that the population growth rate going straight up means that every year the population is about the same as it was the year before. And all the little dots show that sometimes the population on the right means it increased and the population on the left means it decreased. But the dark black dots are the averages. And if you look at that, the average for every single one of these butterflies falls to the left, which means the population growth rate is decreasing on all these butterflies. So where is the monarch in all this? And there you go. Here is that you can see the monarch butterfly here, the black dot showing the decrease, which doesn't really go with what we're seeing these days, which is way, way lower than that. But if you follow up, another one that a lot of people know about, let's take a look at this one at the top. Many of you have probably seen the beautiful West Coast lady, Vanessa Annabella. I mean, she just flutters super fast all over the place. She's another orange one that many people see flying in clusters and migrating and all that. But look at the change in the growth rate of her. And then we have all of these other butterflies in between. Okay, so moving into the issues here, and I'll just touch on these a little bit. So I mentioned that back in 2014, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, because Xerces Society petitioned them to think about listing the monarch butterfly as threatened. So in 2014, they received it. They started an assessment in 2016. And what this doesn't show is they hoped that people would get very concerned and maybe conservation efforts would ramp up and things might be helped during this time. They finally said in 2020, it's warranted, but it's precluded by species of higher concern, which basically means we don't have enough money and we're looking at other species, so we can't do it yet. 4 more years go by and they finally made their findings last year in December, proposed as threatened. So it is right now, folks, proposed. And they've opened it up, or they opened it up for comments through March, and then they extended it to May. But right now, the decision will finally be made on December 13th in 2025 on if the monarch butterfly population in the North America or the United States will be listed as threatened. This is actually a slide from one of their presentations. The reason I put it in is, lo and behold, what do they think the real causes are? Availability of milkweed, loss of degradation of the overwintering sites, insecticide exposure, and climate change. But take a look at this bottom one. This was funny that they had this. Monarchs in North America have a high probability of extinction in 60 years. I already thought that was bad, but wait till you see the next slide. They did modeling to do this, right? And whether you understand or follow their modeling, again, isn't as important as what their findings were. So they're trying to learn, should we list this or not? And so they predicted in the modeling, okay, that in the next 50 years, we're going to see a 50 to 60% decline in the eastern population. But then they mentioned, we also, in our same model, predicted a greater than 99% decline in our western population. Greater than 99%. Why not just say it, folks? What does that mean? The prediction is, they think the model that they used thinks that our western population is going to go out. And our Western monarch population, look at that, they cover almost 20% of the US. So this was bothering and so on. So again, they also see that the Western and Eastern populations are different. If they list the monarchs as threatened, there is a special rule, because some of you might know, if you're really more savvy about this than I am, if a critter is listed as threatened or endangered, you're not supposed to touch them. It's called take, which is all kinds of different actions. Anything they have it as to harass, harm, pursue, shoot, hunt, will, touch, or whatever. And a lot of us were nervous about that, because if they list it, could we still could I still show you that chrysalis that I just showed you? Could we still tag them and do research? Could we still release a monarch butterfly? Or will they allow? So the 401 rule allows you to do, it gives you some exceptions. So that's what we're going to look at, is what are the exceptions? So here are, if the monarch is listed, here are some things that you can still do. And for land stewards, some of these are really important. I mean, if you're a farmer and you're doing good management practices and someone sees a monarch butterfly on your 100 acres, are you supposed to shut things down? Well, let's read this together, because the answer clearly is no. They really looked at this. Habitat and management activities that sustain grassland, shrubland, or forested land that's good for monarch habitat. Yes, keep it up. It's okay if you find monarchs on it. Livestock grazing and routine ranching activities. Agricultural activities on lands that are already in production. Fire management. Yes, we can still fight our fires here in Oregon, in Southern Oregon. Silviculture practices. We can still manage things in our forests. And this one I found rather funny, but it's still true. Don't feel bad and don't think the cops are going to get you if you happen to get a monarch that gets stuck on your vehicle as you're traveling. And different vegetation management activities when monarchs are not present. And as we realized and we mentioned earlier, there's plenty of times when monarchs have left our area and we can do our management activities. So those are things that might happen by accident. But then there's things we have liked to do, and they have considered that. So here's some things that are still allowed, even if it's listed as threatened. You can still collect or captive rear, or as we say, responsibly rear. I do not like the word of captive rearing, of 250 or less monarchs per year. So teachers, tagging, those of you that are maybe have been raising monarch butterflies and releasing, in your yard or with friends or whatever, you can still do that. You can still release them. You can still do things like this with teachers and kids and look at their faces like that. Because as you know, that's how we keep things going and pass the baton. A couple more. You can still do non-lethal science research. In other words, we can still tag monarch butterflies and track where they're going and learn more about them. This one we disagreed with down here. They still are considering, right now, considering the sale or offering for sale of 250 or more fewer captively reared monarchs per year. I personally hope, or many of us hope, that that one gets pulled off because we've never condoned trying to captively rear for sale. And if you find a dead monarch, yes, you can pick it up and keep it, or a dead caterpillar. So that was your, I just wanted to say hi again. You've been listening to me. Haven't been able to see anybody. So we are now going to go to what can we do? And we'll follow up with that. That won't take too long, and we'll have plenty of time for questions here in just a few minutes. So I'll go back to share screen, but hello there. All right, hopefully you can still see this. What can we do? I really like this photo. If you really look closely, this woman has this monarch butterfly in one eyeglass, nectaring on a beautiful milkweed plant. And this is the San Francisco skyline in the other one. Interesting little paradox there, isn't it? What can we do? Well, here we are as land stewards. So let's get local. We can create monarch way stations or pollinator gardens. It's still so simple. And now you understand why it's so important here in Southern Oregon. We are the link. We are one of those links. The monarchs are not going to get any further north to Washington or Central Oregon or Idaho unless they land here and create that second generation. So what we do here is great for our neighborhoods, but it's also super important for the whole migrating population. And as it shows here, you just need 4 things. You need food for the caterpillars. And we all know, I want you to all yell in your rooms, what's that food? Well, I only think 3 of you said anything. Okay, fine. We need food for the adults. And now you know the nectar plants, they need to be ones that they flower with nectar all season long because we have all those different generations that all need to nectar. So we need plants for the adults to go as well. We need water. Well, we've got good water here, and we don't really need water, big lakes. Really what they often like are puddles and wet mud that has moisture and minerals in it. So creating a place like that in your monarch way station, or just call it a pollinator garden, is great. By the way, this is a really cool sign. Maybe you've seen some of these that we've put up on some of the monarch way stations to get people jazzed about it. And then finally, we need shelter. Monarchs, believe it or not, they fly up into the trees and shrubs and they roost like chickens. just like chickens at night. So they sleep every night. So we need some shelter for them, canopy trees and so on. And here's just a shot of a monarch way station that we're not going to go see, but with one of the signs that's out there. This is an interesting one, and this is actually one of the way stations that we're going to go see. Look how small it is. And listen to, check this slide out. Believe it or not, a lot of scientists think the small ones are better than big old fields of milkweed with neon signs calling in the monarchs. And here's what Chip Taylor, the founder of Monarch Watch, has to say. You don't have to have acres of milkweed. In fact, it's better to have small scattered sites than large plots because the big stands of milkweed attract predators and parasites. So having them like a little string of pearls is a great way to go. This is a really, for those of you that are interested in the gardening and planting milkweed, you might find this really interesting. These guys in Michigan did this study. And what they did is they created 1-acre plots where they planted the pollinator plants, which are all the colored dots. And then they planted the milkweed, and they put the milkweed in 3 different places on the plot. The one over here on the far left, they put the milkweed all the way around the edge and none in the middle. In the center here, they put all the milkweed in the middle. And in the item C here, they just sprinkled it all in. And you think, well, who cares? Would there really be much of a difference? Believe it or not, yes, there was a huge difference. For some reason, the milkweed, areas where you put milkweed around the edges, the females had a much higher percentage of egg laying and larvae found on the milkweed in the plots where the milkweed was put around the edges versus the other two. The other two kind of, if you look at both of these graphs, they're both the same, but in both cases around the perimeter. So if you're thinking about that, it's a good thing because milkweed is kind of tough and it also spreads. So consider putting your milkweed in around edges or, off on the sides near the ditches and so on. Kind of nice to know that it's helpful for them as well. Let's see. Yeah, we have time for this. This is another interesting one. If you want to attract different pollinators, this is just some citizen science. This person, Glenn Fine, thanks to Dr. Tom Landis again, he checked how many different pollinator species land on some of these pollinator plants. Not just how many critters, how many different species. So the top one, spreading dogbane, 32 different species showed up. And all of these, if you went down, and I think these will all be available to you later, if some of you might know them. Here's asters. I love asters because they also bloom in the fall for that super generation that needs to migrate. And look at how good it is for a lot of other species as well. This fellow saw 18 different types of pollinators landing on the asters. And so it goes. A lot of other great ones here. Some of you probably know a lot of these. We also have guides, and I think, I know Lynn Kutzman of Jackson County Master Gardeners has another excellent guide, but we have one as well, specific guides for pollinative plants that are native right here for Southern Oregon. So those are available if you want. And like it says down here, don't forget, folks, about the host plants for any butterflies that you want to attract. Learn about what are those host plants and get those planted as well. They're usually good plants for other pollinators too. And then here, just wanted to let you know, we at Southern Oregon Monarch Advocates, we're not the pollinator police or whatever, as far as it has to all be native. When you see some of these gardens, you'll see some native and then others where there's all kinds of different things planted in there. And here are some great suggestions of non-native, but also non-invasive flowering plants that are wonderful for butterflies. And you've probably seen the Tithonia, the Mexican sunflower. You'll see one of those at my way station here. The butterfly bush, verbena, the aster I just mentioned. Some of them are non-native, blue boa augustaceae. So they're great for your backyard gardens as well. But if you're doing restoration where you're out in a wild area and you want to stick with native, there's great selections for that as well. Couple more slides about what you can do. If you're data crunchers, we're learning so much. You know, that a lot of the things I mentioned about the Western monarch, we didn't know back in 2014. It's because we've been tracking them. So there's several. I mentioned Monarch Watch over here. Xerxes has this Western monarch milkweed mapper, and you can go on that, and different dots. The green dots are milkweed. People put GPS coordinates for milkweed that they find. And that was pretty important. We couldn't find any in Nevada. And it's not because they didn't exist, it's because people weren't out there looking for them. And then the orange dots are monarch observations. And so you can crunch the data and get involved with that and help share your observations. Some people just love that. iNaturalist. A lot of you probably heard of that. It's a great one. One of my favorites is Monarch Joint Venture. I love their maps every spring where they show the monarchs that people report. And you can see it grow day by day. And another thing, I love this about the pollinator group. We all work, I mentioned how we're trying to help with folks down at the overwintering sites down in California. No turf, guys. Everyone stays in touch. Don't worry about the boundaries of this California. Is it Idaho? Is it whatever? It's a migrating population. We need to work together. But wait a minute. I don't see OSU extension on here. Uh-oh, I kind of made a mistake, didn't I? Oh, maybe I didn't make a mistake. There we are. Indeed, the OSU extension is another one that works the same way and sees about the pricelessness of the land. Finally, as we're doing here, I don't know how many of you are, what age you all are, but if we don't pass the baton and reach out and share, and boy, is the monarch butterfly a great one for that, to get the aha moment. I mean, look at these kids. Look at them all. These ones, they're looking at a monarch butterfly that was tagged and released. They're from Talent Middle School. There's another one of my grandkids over here. Look at him. He's having breakfast with a monarch. And schools. So passing it, schools, clubs, youth groups, groups like this, get the word out. It's just a great help at the moment. And that really wraps up my talk. I will just show you my thanks, but as you see here, just take a fun look at these three warriors. Here's a male. I hope you can still see that little black dot right there. It just jumped out at me. Look at the chunk pulled out of his wing. What happened to that guy? That had to be a bird. And this guy's still flying around, and he's probably still looking for the warrior princesses as well. And look at her sitting on this fence post. I mean, it's just, I don't know, they just get me. So my thanks to you. I can't see you all out there, but I'm going to stop sharing the screen and be happy to chat a little bit, take some questions or whatever you have.
Thank you, Robert. We do have some questions in the chat. Darren and Lisa asked early on when you were describing the difference between the Western and Eastern populations, if they asked if there are DNA differences between the Eastern and Western monarchs, and did those populations become separated with the rise of the Rocky Mountains?
No, great question. So what I didn't show on that map, what was the person's name? Christina?
No, this was from Darren and Elisa.
Oh, Darren and Elisa. Okay. So they are the same species. And what if you saw on those maps, there's some blending that happens. Arizona is kind of like the Bermuda Triangle for the two populations, you know, with the monsoons and so on. So we all know that there's some mixing That happens often in Arizona, and some people think maybe up in Montana. Montana's kind of split. The eastern half of Montana has the eastern population, and the western, we found, thanks to our tagging programs, is the Western monarch population. And so, but a lot of that's happening and has been observed. For instance, there's a great story about a man who released two monarch butterflies on the same day, and he watched them both fly, and they flew 180 degrees different directions. One flew directly to the west, the other flew to the east. So we know there's some mixing that happens that's kept our monarch populations blended.
Very cool. Milkweed is often one of the later spring plants to emerge. With climate change, how critical is the timing of the arrival of the May-June group and the emergence of the milkweed? I think you kind of spoke to this in some of your slides.
Yes, but I'm glad to reiterate, because the slide I showed the months for what we've learned from California. But yes, it's the exact same principle here. I mean, you saw the climate change graphs that showed how fast it's changing. Here, it's just the whole scale slides out further. And we are looking at that also. We have been collecting the heartleaf milkweed seeds here. That's the only native one. The other one, the Californicus, isn't native here. But the heartleaf could be very helpful for that. And we are looking, excuse me, we're looking at that. But if people want to try to get that growing in their gardens, it's tough. But go for it. I mean, it would be helpful, and you'll see how it works with the rest, and we can be a little bit more prepared for what's happening.
And when you were talking about the overwintering down by Pismo Beach, the question arose that prior to the introduction of eucalyptus trees, what trees did the monarchs migrate to or overwinter in? Do you have a sense of what tree, the native tree they might have used, or trees?
I don't, and that's a great question. I know Tom Landis did some work, and I think some of the friars, you call them friars from the missions, they documented clusters over there. So we know this was happening several hundred years ago, because the monarch butterfly was actually a tropical butterfly and migrated up here because of that. But I do not know what other trees they would have used, because, you know, you're right, the eucalyptus isn't, I don't think, native there. And also there's no pollen on it. It's their site for overwintering. So it's really is kind of strange. The same with the oyamel pines in the Western monarch population. I mean, in the Eastern population, the pine trees up there. But I know they're native, so I'm going off on a little tangent. Sorry, I really don't know, and I'm not sure who would know, but I could maybe find out about that, Eugene, and get back to you. But the eucalyptus have been there for a long, long time.
Question from me, and I was thinking about that superpopulation that migrates back south. Do they tend to fly higher than, or are they at the surface level in their migration? And I was thinking about this, and we read a book recently in the Land Stewards Book Club about, and had a large chapter about monarchs migrating along roadways. It was a book about crossings and how roads affect wildlife. It seems like the eastern population moves along many of the highway corridors, both for food because milkweed grows along the margins, and also because they tend to follow the sort of historic migration areas. Do we sense the Western population doing something similar? And is it getting beat up by I-5 and other roadways?
I don't think with our tagging program, I don't think we really know yet. And also we are learning that the whole population, you could be right, but it's interesting that the whole population as an organism, they try a little bit of everything. In other words, some years, there was one year where all kinds of adults were seen along the coastline. They were showing up in Eureka, in Trinidad, and Crescent City and Brookings. And often they rarely go up that way, and most of them just kind of go right up through the Colstein Valley and the I-5 corridor, just because, maybe not because of the highway, but because it is the natural corridor. And I think you're right, they are following the milkweed, of course. And you were talking about height of flying, and I just wanted to mention that that was a really interesting observation by Dr. David James, that some people thought that the size of the monarchs, that the biggest ones were the high flyers, and you needed to have big monarch butterflies, that they'd be the ones that make it to fly down to the overwintering sites. However, the spring monarchs, he's observed that the smaller ones are a little more agile and can flutter around, and they actually may be doing better for the spring migration, where they just off move from the overwintering sites and just need to go 20 or 30 miles and reproduce. And so they wouldn't be flying high, they'd be flying low and skittering around over fences and around infrastructure and so on. So it's a little bit of the answer is a little bit like, it depends on which part of the whole migration pattern we're trying to track.
Okay, thank you. Doug asks, how big of a problem is tropical milkweed, or I guess non-native milkweeds?
Oh, I'm so glad somebody asked that. Are you baiting me, Doug? Whoever you are, I think that's great. We absolutely do not like the tropical milkweed, and yes, it's a problem. I know a lot of people like it. It's nice in a pot. It looks great. But what, let's see, Karen Oberhauser from, uh, uh, well, they've joined with Monarch Joint Venture now. Uh, yes. Anyway, found that there is the one parasite that really is bad for monarch butterflies is got two words that are about this long. We all call it OE because it's too hard to mention. And what the studies showed was that this parasite, OE, the spores, there was much, much more of it prevalent on tropical milkweed. And a lot of people here said, well, that's okay because tropical milkweed, it dies off every year. So all that stuff dies off and it freezes and you don't have to worry about it. But I think a lot of you know, if you've grown milkweed, it doesn't all die off. There's always some milkweed shoots and stems that, hang out for a while, and the spores can make it. So we really, really like to stress there are 3 native milkweed species, and stick away, don't, and especially the tropical milkweed. So thanks, Doug, for even asking the question.
So if you head to a nursery, be sure to ask, right?
Yes.
Um, Christina Lefevre with Pollinator Project Rogue Valley has put a comment in here, just a reminder, visit their plant sale, 4-vendor plant sale on 10/12. Large selection of native plants in the area to support pollinators. Christina is doing some great work there, help support those gardens.
And I'll just say, Christina, hi, were you here at the start? And I know you can't answer me, but my second slide showed how you and I made our presentation together from Pollinator Project Rogue Valley back in 2021 with the OSU land stewards. So happy to see
I saw
you.
it. Thank you. Appreciate
All right.
it.
Well, hi there.
Trisha asks, how big a problem is predatory insects such as praying mantis, spiders, earwigs on the monarch population?
Great question. Because people, they hate that. I mean, have you ever seen a tachnid fly? You guys, a tachnid fly. It's like in the movie Predator. Tachnid fly will find a monarch caterpillar and lay an egg in it. And then the egg hatches inside the caterpillar and eats its way out while the thing is still alive. And then it comes out and it's disgusting. And look, Eugene's making a face, and all of you are probably, Robert, you're disgusting. You're curious, but you're disgusting. But I'm bringing that up because that all sounds horrible, doesn't it? And the praying mantis and all these other things. And it's true, they predate on the monarch butterfly and other butterflies. But the monarchs have evolved with them and the parasites. Truly, the big issues are those anthropogenic or human caused ones. Those are the new ones that the monarch butterfly and other butterflies cannot keep up with. They have not evolved with it. So yes, those other issues are super important. Predation on monarchs, even before they leave the egg stage, is 80%. I could show you a really cool graph about that. So it's important, but the monarchs can deal with it. The real answer is they've evolved with that. Smoke too. People ask about fires, and we're having more fires. But again, it's still something. Yes, it's increasing, it's changing, but the whole concept is something that our insect population has been evolving itself with all along. So relative to these big things that we're doing, just put it all in perspective, I guess.
Sheila asks another one kind of related to predation. This year is the first year I've seen the cobalt blue beetles. While it doesn't harm monarchs, does it compete for food? And could it eat the eggs?
Good question. And it's not an issue. They do not eat the eggs. They eat the milkweed. They kind of coexist. It's usually the beetles are not the ones that decimate the milkweed. It's if you don't have enough and you're lucky enough to have monarch caterpillars, it's the caterpillars that really get after it. They're fine. I'll add, since you asked, another thing that people really dislike is there is a certain aphid, that orange aphid called an oleander aphid. Yeah, I see somebody shaking their head there. Same thing. Those aphids don't eat the eggs, and the monarchs, the caterpillars will go right over them. But the problem with them is if there's too many on your milkweed, and don't worry, those oleander aphids, they don't jump to other species. They stick to the milkweed. But if there's too many, they do weaken the plant. So that's the issue. But as far as a direct predation, neither one of them really cause an issue.
Sheila also asked if the fourth generation encloses in September, why are we tagging monarchs now?
Well, that's we have to look at the graph, but I think you might not have seen it correctly. That's the generation that would take off then, but the final generation, we're in that now. I was just talking to David James about it. The middle of August is kind of the blendy point. Early August, you're still pretty much in the generation that's going to stick around here. But anything that's eclosing now from about, he said middle of August through now is very likely going to be part of the migrating population. So that's why we start tagging right around now. We would tag even earlier, but we've learned enough about the ones that kind of jump around, and we only have, we're all volunteers. And so it's nice to learn how the monarch butterflies would even stay in Southern Oregon, but we're sticking to the migrating population. So actually, Sheila, that starts a little sooner than September, more like August 15th.
Great. And then Trish also asked about how wildfire activity and smoke affect migration. You sort of spoke to that a moment ago. Is there any data or anything sort of indicating with increasing fires if that makes any effect or has changed things at all?
I can't say definitely about that. The smoke itself and fires isn't an issue, but yes, one of the things is at the overwintering sites, the whole area. When I talked about listing of threatened, some people might have been saying, well, why? Where are they going to be stringent? They're really focusing on the overwintering sites as a start. And that goes with your question. The fires that have affected the overwintering sites and burned holes in them and opened them up to where now the clusters are changing, that's a big deal. So some of the aspects of fire do absolutely need to be looked at, especially all around the overwintering sites. But as far as just the more frequent fires, I don't think we really have any scientific data to support or know if that's affecting them. And like I showed earlier, that compared to the big three.
Thank you. I mean, I can't help but think a little bit about 2020, and wasn't that a real drop in population there? Also a huge fire year. Who
Yes.
knows?
Well, you're right. But then the drop it's hard to know because this big swing, this big drop I mean, that was a 10-time drop in a year. That's huge. And that is we don't have enough data. I hate to say that. Scientists always do that, don't they? We don't have enough data yet, but we can't see a trend yet to know yet, Eugene, if that's part of it or not. Is there something that goes with fire frequency as well? Too early yet, I think, to tell.
Okay. Well, thank you for this great presentation, Robert. I mean, the real fun is on Saturday, so looking forward to seeing you for the tour, and other folks who are on this call. Hopefully we'll get a chance to look at some of this stuff in person and circle up again and talk more about monarchs. So
Great.
with that, I'll let you go. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you on Saturday.
Thanks,
All right.
Robert.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot. I'll see some of you later. Blue Heron Park.